Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of FireBytes. Today we're actually going to take a deep dive into ransomware and look at the intricacies, look at what actually is going on behind the scenes, and ultimately how WatchGuard can stop WannaCry, you name it. There might be another variant tomorrow, but definitely we'll look at some of the attributes of that. We'll do a live hack and see how exactly WatchGuard can use a tiered layer defense strategy to ultimately block your or protect your users against those ransomware variants. So as we look at today's agenda, again, if you have listened to another episode of FireBytes before, you know that I'm not that big on slides, so we'll definitely try to keep it at a minimum with the slideshows today, and we'll definitely go into a more live environment. And again, hopefully this 30 minutes, if we go a little bit over, will provide you with the tips and tricks on how to best secure your network against ransomware. So again, as we look at today's agenda, we're going to look at behind the scenes on ransomware. We're going to look at why a tiered network strategy is best. And we're going to talk about some of the tips for a strong network security strategy. And then we're going to look at the detection and prevention of ransomware. We're actually going to look at every tool from WatchGuard, from spam blocker, all the way to our latest and greatest TDR, threat detect and response, and how we can correlate that traffic data for you. So before we get started, let's go ahead and kick things off with a trivia question. Can red be used to stop ransomware? We have true and false. Feel free to go ahead and answer that, and Wendy will moderate or look at who got it right and send out the prize pack. So just to clarify, red, while you are answering, red is not the name of my favorite color. My favorite color is actually black. Red is also the name of our line, but in this case, we're actually talking about a reputation-enabled defense network, which is an important part in our security fabric, and we'll definitely cover that today. So I am seeing some of the answers coming in. Absolutely, and you guys are correct. Joe, Michael, Drew, I see some of your questions. Red can be used to stop ransomware, and we'll go ahead and demonstrate that today. And you know, that's one of the most powerful tools of the Firebox, in my opinion, that doesn't get as much focus as it needs to. In fact, you can actually use red to go ahead and automatically block or automatically give a fast pass to objects on the web. So let's say you go to ESPN.com and there's cross-site or some sort of malware injection through the ads. Red can actually protect you against that individual object. As well as just like TSA pre-check, it's going to give you a fast pass to the front of the line because it's a reputation network, and we'll display or we'll show you how that works today. So looking at behind the scenes of ransomware, you know, today we have WannaCry, WCry 2.0, WannaCryptor, WannaCrypt. The important thing is, you know, as we look at some of the stats of that, and that just took the industry by surprise. And, you know, sadly, when we look at that differential, those that article was first published by Microsoft on March 14th. Way later, on May 12th, over 75,000 victims in 90 plus countries were infected. That means that between March 14th and May 12th, very few people actually patched their systems from Microsoft. In fact, on March 21st, we actually had our IPS signature out for the WannaCry spreader for the SMB vulnerability. And if you had WatchGuard and you had it properly configured, you would have had your network obviously protected against WannaCry. Interestingly enough, when we talk about WannaCry, patches are available despite end of life for Windows XP and Server 2003. WCry patches are available for those. So definitely go out and grab those patches. Now we're going to kind of switch in. We're going to do a live demonstration just a little bit. Want to tell you why we're having such an issue with, for instance, these exploits, such as WannaCry, crypto, you name it. And essentially, unfortunately, these exploit kits are readily available on the black market. So they're designed to scan your system for vulnerabilities. So as we talk about Adobe, Reader, Java, Flash, even Windows itself has vulnerabilities. Now, I've actually heard people say to me, well, I don't need to worry about network security. We have all Macs on there. And sure, that might be one of the strategies that you might have, but unfortunately, you're not. That's not a 100% foolproof strategy just to have Macs, because obviously we're still running Adobe Reader, we're still running Java, Flash, and looking at some of those vulnerabilities. So these exploit kits are going to exploit those vulnerabilities by downloading the malicious code. Now, the key thing on this is that it needs that C2C traffic right here. It's actually command and control traffic. When we talk about, for instance, malware, reaching out and getting that key, encryption key, to go ahead and encrypt all your files so that when you actually pay the bitcoins, you can get the key back. So that's that command and control traffic. And ultimately, if we're able to block that command and control traffic out of the gate, 9 times out of 10, or maybe 60% of the time, we're actually able to stop that malware from actually reaching out and encrypting those files, or reaching out, getting that encryption key, and starting that encryption process. And essentially, this malware can be used by anyone. You can buy it on the black market, unfortunately, and it's going to tie that system into a botnet. You can actually rent botnets, unfortunately. So that's why we are seeing such a prevalent, or we still have an issue with, for instance, morphing ransomware. So these advanced threats require layered defense strategy. Again, advanced threats leverage multiple vectors of attack. No single defense will protect you completely from advanced attacks. There's no silver bullet from anyone out there. However, the more layers of security you have, the greater chance additional protection might catch an advanced threat. Now, some of you might have, for instance, it might not be WatchGuard customers today. You might have an older device. Maybe you went to Best Buy, or you're running a ASA, which is essentially Firewall. Maybe you have some IPS signatures as well. But essentially, just the Firewall level itself, we're just doing, for instance, NAT or PAT on there, and that's you go to Best Buy, and that's all it's doing. Today, we're actually running UTM, or a Unified Threat Management, or Next Generation Firewall, and adding on these additional services on there. So we have intrusion prevention signatures, we have antivirus, anti-spam, reputation services, which is red, and then APT protection. And then on top of that, we actually have our TDR as well from there. So just to illustrate, maybe some of you have actually seen this spam blocker example, where we are running APT blocker within looking at our emails. And in this particular case, there was a zip file that came across. I do travel a fair amount, so had I received an email from American Airlines, it wouldn't have been that surprising. However, many of you are probably already recognizing that the actual email address looks like it's spoofed here, right? So this is actually not from American Airlines. It's from Bartlesville Heat and Air, and that's actually spoofed as well. However, many of our users, unfortunately, aren't familiar with actually looking at those details. So the Firebox looked at the zip file, saw that it had an APT object, maybe that was some sort of ransomware on there, and went ahead and blocked it. However, as we look at WatchGuard, I want to go into this tiered defense strategy and look at a real life scenario. So let me hop out of the slides for a little bit. Let me go back and we have a couple of scenarios here. So one is that we have, for instance, this bad user alert, right? So this is a desktop. I was a network administrator for about 15 years in a school district, and unfortunately we didn't have alerts like this on the desktop, but certainly that would have been more helpful. And I always used to joke and say my life would be better if it weren't for our network users, because they're our biggest hole or biggest vulnerability when it comes to network security. So I have sample malware here. Now, just as a heads up, just make sure that if you're testing, you're taking precaution. In other words, my network is cut off here. I'm disconnected from this virtual machine. We have a couple variants here, WannaCry, Tesla Crypt, what have you. Now, the important thing is, as we look at, for instance, documents on here, obviously one of the first things it's going to do is encrypt our documents. So I just want to show you that we have documents. Now, the interesting thing, as we look at, for instance, WannaCry, I'm just going to go ahead and show you. It doesn't take long at all. We see all of these files come in here. It says, please read me. Your important files are encrypted. What do I do? We have the Bitcoin address. A lot of them actually will have tech support as well, so that if you need help finding out how to pay your Bitcoins, they're going to give you that assistance and be able to get their money. So if we look at, for instance, our documents at this point, all of our documents are encrypted and we don't have any access to them. And again, if we looked at any shared documents, that would also be encrypted as well from there. And now we see, oops, your files have been encrypted, they'll be lost, etc. from here. So hopefully not that many of you have this kind of hands-on experience, and hopefully you are behind a firewall that is actually protecting you. So as we look at, let me just go ahead and close this out here. Now, the number one thing they say about live demonstrations is never do a live hack. So we're actually going to try, see if the environments are friendly to us today and see if everything works as it should. So in this case, we actually have a smart user with our TDR environment. Now, just to recap here, TDR is WatchGuard's latest and greatest when it comes to threat detect and response. So I want to go ahead and show you just a brief overview. This is our dashboard. We have indicators. When we look at our timeline, we see we have a couple of threats. Now, real quick, just want to mention that we actually have a host that runs on the operating systems, right? So we don't care if your boss takes his laptop to Starbucks, tries to download some sort of system or some sort of file from Starbucks, because we're ultimately blocked, and we'll talk about that process as well. So if we look at, for instance, sample malware here, again, this is going to be able to show you how to protect. So a couple of things. I want to show you, for instance, let's go ahead and extract this. And they are password protected so that we don't actually inadvertently set off some sort of malware in our environment here. Now, as we look at, want to show you one of the powers of TDR is the ability to ultimately block that file before the encryption process. Some of our competitors are actually will allow that encryption process to start, and then it'll actually try to stop and roll back. In this case, I want to show you Task Manager. We have Tesla Crypt. We're going to run it. And we see here that no extra tasks are actually running. We stop that process. We've actually removed it as well. So from here, we want to go ahead and I'm just going to show you someone, for instance, downloads maybe some additional, and just to clarify, this is a whitelisted directory here. So I can have all of my bad stuff in here. Now, if someone actually downloads some sort of file on the desktop, it's going to automatically remediate that file. And I'm going to have show you here, we have some sort of file download that was actually a Trojan as well. So we showed you the process of actually stopping that ransomware. So just to, while we're going through, I want to show you some of the other things that are going on here. We actually have a CyberCon level with TDR. So in the event that perhaps you're listening to Corey Knockreiner's, our CTO, and he has a Secplicity blog, comes out with some sort of alert that you should raise the awareness on there, in your environment, you can actually just change your CyberCon level. What that actually does is that starts to impact some of your policies here. So for instance, if I want to say, you know what, let's kill and quarantine any file that has an indicator level of about 8 and up, and as you just saw if you're watching this, we just had that malware removed from the desktop, and that was automatically happening from there. So again, as we look at this, we can actually have a cybercon level. We say, let's go ahead and remove files that are severe, 8 or above 8. We're going to kill that process, quarantine the file, and delete that registry entry. And that's happening on our client base, or our client from there. Now, the interesting thing about it as well is that the Firebox becomes the network sensor. The interesting thing about this, so we have the host sensor, which is basically running on the desktop. And then we also had, for instance, the network sensor as well from there. Now, in this case, we see that it quarantined the file. That was under a fail because it automatically removed that file. And it just is a matter of number of tier or number of processes trying to run, and it had already removed that file. So if I want, I could actually say, you know what, let's look at some of the indicators on my network. So if we look at, we see here additional info. This was actually, let me just bring this over here real quick. This was on Tesla Crypt. I'm going to show you on this virus total real quick here. So again, the key is that, you know, some of this morphing malware that comes out, this is 54 virus engines detected out of 61. So again, this has been out for quite a while. But for instance, we see Cryptolocker. If you're running, for instance, one of these antivirus solutions, I'm sorry, it's probably encrypted all your files, and unfortunately is now asking you for that ransomware or ransom payment. So again, looking at these indicators, the other thing is that we can actually look at, for instance, as we look at indicators here, we can actually look at if they've gone to bad reputation. So again, red is our friend here. We're going to be able to see that reputation-enabled defense network actually blocked that from happening. Host ransomware prevention. So this is where it kicked in and said, you know what, let's go ahead and remove those files on your desktop. And we see that it actually did that, and obviously I showed that to you in a live demonstration as well. Now going back to this, you know, I wanted to tell you real quick here, as we look at our best setup for our policies. Let me just bring this up here real quick. And again, it's about that layered tier defense strategy. So if I look at my Firebox, let me just bring over my configuration real quick here. And we'll kind of walk through some of those setups, and hopefully it's going to be helpful for you in terms of configuring your network and how that interacts with that. So I'm going to minimize, clean up some things here real quick. So I'm looking at a T30. I'm behind a T30 on my environment here. So the first thing I actually want to do is come under here and set up my proxies. Now, in the event that you guys haven't, and I unfortunately do see a number of networks still where outgoing is enabled, and essentially if it's matched, it's going to be handled by the proxy. However, if it's going out and it's you know, some sort of ransomware that's going out a random port trying to grab that encryption key, go ahead and try to move away from an environment where you're just allowing all outbound traffic. So we're going disabling that. Save it to the firewall here, and I'll walk through some of the other setups as well. So under here, as I save it, I have this website set up, hackertools.com, and we have a URL in there. We have some fun files on here, a WannaCry. So as we look at this, I want to go ahead and walk through some of those best setup on here. So the first thing is that we want to set up our proxies, right, for HTTP and HTTPS. If you're not familiar with how to do deep packet inspection, I posted a YouTube video to the YouTube channel. Again, if you haven't seen the YouTube channel, let me just show that to you real quick here. We just go to youtube.com/WatchGuard NW. And that's going to give us all of our files on there in terms of what kinds of, or for instance, our deep packet inspection on there. So in this case, we want to go ahead and look at our general settings. Whoops. Let's go ahead and, I don't have a policy for my go-to meeting, so I just cut myself off. So I'm going to re-enable my outgoing policy here. All right, so hopefully you guys are back with me. I had cut myself off from my outgoing policy because my Mac machine behind the T30 was not, I didn't have a policy for that. So again, number one rule is make sure you have policies for everything. I cut my outbound rule, and right before the session, I had said any trusted. I changed it to an IP address, so my Mac did not have a way to get out to the internet on there. We should be back here. And again, my apologies, but under videos, we can show you here deep packet inspection. If you're curious on how to do deep packet inspection, view our YouTube channel, and we have a video for that. So looking at this, we have our HTTP proxy, and we are basing on IP addresses. Again, the easier way is if we had a single sign-on environment where we are identifying our users. So getting back on track here, and my apologies, we have, for instance, a number of things going on. The number one question I typically would ask people is, why are they still allowing, for instance, EXEs to come through their network or zip files? So, one of the things right off the bat is you could say, let's go ahead and deny those EXEs. And we look at what actually happens from there. Let's go into WannaCry. We see here the body content type is denied based on the EXEs. And we're going to kind of just walk through this and kind of open up or look at those tiered strategy and see how it affects our Firebox. So in this case, let's say for some weird reason we needed to have EXEs run across the network. The next step is I want to go ahead and set it to AV scan. I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and I'm going to save that to the Firebox now. So as we look at that, next step here, we are changing it to allow. But again, I would say, 9 times out of 10, you probably don't need EXEs to run across the network on there. So in this case, now we actually can see that it's based on reputation-enabled defense. And we look here, I'm going to pause this. So the first thing on the traffic monitor, again, traffic monitor is your friend as a network administrator. Get extremely technical and view all the details happening behind the scenes. So in this case, we see that it was blocked based on the EXE. And then I went ahead and changed it as well to allow that EXE to go through on Antivirus. Next up, we have bad reputation. And what this actually means is as we look at bad reputation or reputation-enabled defense network and look at that strategy, what it ends up doing is it'll set up a default score, and then it hits a threshold from there. So every time someone in the world behind a WatchGuard goes to this particular object, it's going to either increase or decrease the score. So I think it's about an average of 3 visits. Let's say it's a good object 3 times. Then we're going to get a fast pass or a fast block that we can see here. Now that's saving about 20 to 30% of your firewall speeds because we don't need to run that antivirus scans on there. So again, great way to have that security and speed up your firewall. I'm going to go ahead and remove this layer of defense strategy as well. So again, it's just like an onion. We're peeling back the layers and seeing how that tiered defense strategy is the best way when it comes to ransomware. Right? So in this case, we're now saving it to the firewall, and we have disabled reputation-enabled defense network. So as I look at this, we haven't quite saved it there. So now what it's actually doing from here is that we look at and we see the page can't be displayed. And if we look at what's actually going on behind the scenes here, I stop that. Let's go ahead and continue our traffic. I might need to just try it one more time here. And essentially now what it's doing is it's picking it up on AV. So as I click on, for instance, the file, we see here, whoops, there we go. And now we see our HTTP virus was found from there. So this is a virus that is well known under there. Now, in the event that it actually didn't have a signature, I just want to go ahead and show you what actually ends up happening at this point. So let's say antivirus let it go through because it's a morphing malware. And now we are leveraging our Sandbox analysis using best of breed provider last line out of the Bay Area. And as we look at what actually ends up happening, that file is uploaded, and I'm just going to simulate what is actually going on behind the scenes here. So I'm going to go into my sample malware. I'm going to go into my WannaCry sample. I'm going to go ahead and upload that. Now, one of the key differentiators with WatchGuard using last line, and again, if you were to go to last line, you could absolutely get this enterprise tool. It's going to cost about $60,000 as a just an entry level. With WatchGuard, we just have it as either under our total security, or you can license it a la carte with Antivirus. And one of the key differentiators with WatchGuard is we take those results back in about 30 seconds here. So as we can see here, we identified that ransomware code. We're registering for that auto start during Windows boot. And we're taking all these results back onto the firewall, and again, blocking against those 0 days where traditional antivirus solutions don't have those signatures yet. We see here Tor anonymization client. So again, it's just trying to leave my network on any available IP address that's out there or port. So that's kind of the power of APT blocker. So we talked about, for instance, using, let's go back at this and just go through some of the strategy again. So as we kind of put things back, we have APT blocker. That's going to be that morphing malware that's blocking those 0-day threats. We have antivirus, right? So this is blocking any known signatures out there. Then the next step is that we can actually take it and block on web blocker. So for instance, as we look at malware command and control traffic. So let's say something reaches out and it hits advanced malware command and control traffic. We're able to block that on the web blocker side of the house. And then you have your body content types again. So if matched, we're going to AV scan it, and definitely we're going to allow Windows EXEs through after they've been AV scanned. Or what we could say is, you know what, let's go ahead and deny those all the way, because we shouldn't have a need for those running in our network. And then the same thing for the HTTPS proxy, we're able to tie right into this proxy action. The other thing is, as we look at application control, right? We talked about the power in previous sessions of streaming media. We're going to maybe block or limit it, but also peer-to-peer networks, we're going to drop that. The other thing is that as we look at, for instance, crypto admin, again, that command and control traffic, we are blocking that from running across the network. Now, the other thing is, WatchGuard doesn't need a proxy to run application control or IPS on those security services. So again, you can run those security services on any policies that you make, but that's the power of WatchGuard being able to run those security services and then inside the proxy as well from there. So let's go back to the slides real quick and finish up. I know we're at the top of 30 minutes here. Let's go ahead and get the slideshow back up. And again, the TDR is going to be able to correlate that. So real quick, let's talk about the strategy before we move on. We disabled reputation-enabled defense network to allow that. Again, this is trying to allow WannaCry through. And we saw how difficult it was that we had to peel back each layer here, right? We had to disable red, we had to disable EXEs, we had to disable AV, APT. And then after all that, we uploaded WannaCry to last line, saw that we had those results back in a matter of seconds. The other thing is I want to show you these signatures on the WatchGuard security portal. So as we look at the security portal from WatchGuard, just to show you those SMB signatures here. So again, you could just go watchguard.com/security portal. And that's going to give you all those signatures, for instance, application signatures, IPS signatures, web blocker, spam blocker. I'm going to go ahead and just go into IPS. As I mentioned, with Flash, we're covering all those vulnerabilities. We have a number of CVEs for Flash. But if we actually wanted to look at SMB specifically for the WannaCry variations, that's these guys right here. MS17-010 SMB remote code execution. And we can see here that, this is essentially the WannaCry vulnerability that is being blocked on the firewall level. And again, we released that on 4/21. Now, the other thing is, as we're in here and I have your time, just want to go ahead and point out that under subscription services, and again, while I'm using Policy Manager today, all of this can be done through the web UI as well. Actually, very easy to do from there. I want to go ahead and point out update services. Make sure that you're enable automatic update, that you have all of your updates automatically happening on there. And again, geolocation database. If you haven't seen, WatchGuard can now block based on country. So again, powerful subscriptions by WatchGuard from there. Just make sure they're set to automatically update. Okay, so we showed you the signatures on the WatchGuard security portal. We showed you application control, the ability to block the command and control traffic from there. And then we talked about the TDR, being able to look at a correlation detection. And again, the Firebox is the network sensor so that we can say, you know what, by itself, maybe reaching out to a random IP address isn't that alarming. However, if we correlate that with actual software that's running on there, and again, that's actually happening in this TDR threat sync cloud. So the Firebox is the network sensor. We have threat feeds coming in, and then we have cloud threat intelligence. We're working with a number of SIM providers and other data streams coming in there and communicating directly with the host sensor. Now, the powerful thing is that we don't care if the host sensor leaves the network because we have that application running on there. And that's not a traditional antivirus replacement that's going to work in addition to traditional antivirus. And absolutely, we can run those together as well from there. But here we see, for instance, viruses. And again, that's the network correlation. We see that it came from my network sensor. We see the ICAR. We see there was a bad file that came across on Google, and we're taking that across as well, or protecting. So again, we're protecting those endpoints off of the network. One engine that has a heuristics engine, a networks event engine, and the behavior analysis engine under one sensor running for you. We talked about the policy, being able to say, you know what, at this level, let's go ahead and automatically kill any moving file that comes across the network at that's a level 8 or higher. And we can automatically do that. We showed you that process of stopping WannaCry, stopping, for instance, Tesla Crypt from happening. So some of you might be wondering, how are these security subscriptions licensed? As we talked about the tiered security services, pulling back the layers of the onion, you can look at licensing the security subscriptions a la carte. So we have intrusion prevention. So you can just go with support, intrusion prevention, application control, web blocker, reputation-enabled defense. We have APT blocker and antivirus. However, most people realize that if they get one or two services, it's better to actually go into the bundle. So then we have the basic security bundle. That has everything except for DLP and APT blocker, as you can see here, as well as threat detection and response. So to get all of the security services that we've been talking about today, you can actually just get, and that's what most people do, the total security bundle that includes all of those services as well as gold support. Now, as we look at a best security practices checklist, just make sure, we're going to have to run through this pretty quick. Some of you might have seen this, but I just kind of keep a running log of my best security practices checklist. As a network administrator, make sure that you're patching, upgrading, and patching those. I can't stress that enough. Your operating systems, your desktops, your network switches, your firewalls, etc. Disallow certain file types. Why are we still allowing executables through? Most networks, we don't need that to go through. Separate guest network traffic and corporate traffic, network segmentation. Also, the next one, lockdown DNS, NTP, and other outbound traffic as hackers are using these as command and control channels. Again, they're also using HTTPS because a lot of people aren't doing deep packet inspection on there. So with WatchGuard, deep packet inspection's free. We actually have the power to run deep packet inspection. Within the Firebox, we just push out the certificates, no problem. have a solid backup plan. So again, it's not a matter of necessarily if. Maybe someone also plugs in a jump drive. TDR is going to pick that up. But let's say something ends up happening. Make sure that you have a solid backup plan. Block IPs from countries you don't need. Lock down those USB ports. Make sure that you have automatic updates on your WatchGuard signatures, or any signatures for that matter. And then lastly, be in control of your network. I can't tell you how many times I was sitting in my office and someone would come running in as an alleged emergency. They needed to have a hole opened on the firewall or policy. And before I know it, I have, policies that I forget are in there, and we have more of a Swiss cheese model of security. And then the biggest thing is be in the know. Tune into secplicity.org. That's Corey Knockreiner's channel, our CTO. Just great videos, quick 2-minute videos on, for instance, the week of security overview. So again, we're not able to keep up with everything. At least if you're me, you're not able to keep up with everything. But if you go to Secplicity, Corey just runs through some of the top level security vulnerabilities for you.